starting the 6th parak today. So this parak is going to be a little bit of a different, like a fresh breath of air, a little bit different, a little bit different than the first half of the Masachet. It's a little bit less cheshbon and cases. Let's just jump right in. So says the Mishnah. So Nun Gimel Amud Bet, beginning Perek Shishi. Haba al Yevimto. So the Mishnah is going to talk about how to accomplish Yibum. Okay? So Yibum is Bia. The Yavam has Bia with the Yevamah. That's Yibum. Now, Haba al Yevimto. Somebody who has Bia with his Yevamah. Ben Bishogeg. Whether it was done Bishogeg. So what's the case of Shogeg? So Rashi says he thought he was having Bia with his wife, and lo and behold, he didn't realize it was his Yevamah. Ben B'mezid. Whether he did it B'mezid. What's Mezid? Rashi says he didn't have intention of doing a mitzvah of Yibum. He had intention of Znut, of just a Bia of Znut with his Yevamah. Ben Be'ones, whether he was forced. So the Gemara is going to explain what exactly the case of Ones is. Ben Beratzon, whether he did it Beratzon with the right intentions. Either way, Afilu hu shogeg vehi mezida, hu mezid vehi shogeget, even if he is shogeg and she's mezid, or he is mezid and she's shogeget, hu anus vehi lo anusa, hu anusa vehi lo anus. He was forced to have the bia, she wasn't, or she was forced to have the bia, he wasn't. Echad ha-ma'areh, whether he just is ma'areh. So ma'areh is, we're going to get a little bit more into it later on in the Gemara, what exactly it is, but it's not a complete bia. It's just a partial bia. Echad ha-gomer, whether he does gemar bia, which is a complete bia, kana. So either way, he's koneh. All of those cases of bia, it's good enough to make a kinyan for the yibum, and he accomplished yibum. Okay? Velo chilek ben bia lebia, and there's no difference between one type of bia and another, which we're gonna get into that also. V'chen haba lachat mikol ha'arayot shebetorah. Now the Mishnah says we're not done. Same thing is with arayot. So the Torah lists a number of arayot, of people who the Torah says a person is not allowed to be with. His sister, his aunt, his this, his that, and the other. So if he's with them in any one of the following ways, he's also over. O pisulot, or if he's with any one of the pisulot. Kegon, almana lekohen gadol. For example, an almana was together with a kohen gadol. Grusha v'chalutza lekohen hediot. Or a grusha or a chalutza was together with a regular kohen. Mamzeret untilan Yisrael, or a mamzeret was together with Yisrael, or bat Yisrael a mamzer unatin, or a bat Yisrael was with a male mamzer. Any case where there's an isur to be together, and they're together, whether it's be'ones, whether it's beratzon, whether it's just ha'ara, whether it's gmar bia, pasla, he's posel that lady for kuna. So for example, if somebody is with his sister be'ones, she's now psula l'kuna. If somebody is with any one of the arayot, or any isser relationship, be'ones, or be'shogeg, or any one of these cases, he's posel her for kuna. Now, just incidentally, Rashi points out, what about the people who are already psula l'kuna? What about grusha to a kohen? She's already pasul kuna. So what does it mean if he's with her ba'ones, she's pasul kuna? It means that she's no longer allowed to have truma if she was a bat kohen. Velo chilek ben bia lebia. And again, there's no difference between bia to bia. Okay, and also another thing you see from the Mishnah is with arayot, a person is over by just ha'ara. We're gonna get into that in the Gemara, without even doing a full gemar bia. Okay. So, Maya Filu. So the first question the Gemara asks is, in the Mishnah, it said a case where someone is together with his Yevamah, whether he's Bishogeg, Mezid, Ones, Ratzon, he's Koneh. And then it says, even if he's Shogeg and she's not, or she's Shogeg and he's not. So what's that Afilu? So says the Gemara, Lo Mebaya Kamar. We're saying the greater Chidush. I mean, we're going in order of Chidushim. Okay, Tov. Lo mibaya hu shogeg v'hi kamechavna lemitzvah nun gimel amud bet, right after the Mishnah. So not only in a case where she's shogeg and he has kavanah for yibum, it's right in front, right there, yeah. Not only in a case where she's shogeg, but he has kavanah for yibum. I'm sorry, other way around. Lo mevaya hu shogeg v'hi kamechavna lemitzvah. Not only in a case where the guy is bishogeg, he thinks he's being together with his wife, and she has kavanah for bia. She knows that it's the yavam, and she knows that this is for the purpose of yibum. In that case, he's koneh. Inami hu mezid v'hi kamechavna lemitzvah. Or in a case where he is doing b'mezid, he's just having in mind znut, and she has kavanah for yibum. In those cases, for sure, he's koneh. Ela afilu, but even in a case of hu shogeg v'hi mezida, that he's shogeg and she's mezida, right? Or vice versa. The tarvaihu lo kamechavni l'shem mitzvah, that both of them are not having kavanah for the mitzvah, afilu hachikana. That's the chidush of the Mishnah, that even in such a case, he's koneh. Okay? So, Tani Rabbi Chia teaches Rabbi Chia as follows. Afilu shnehem shogegim, shnehem mezidim, shnehem anusim. Even if both of them are shogeg, both of them are mezid, both of them are ones. Okay, which means the man and the woman, they were both shogeg. Either they both thought that they were each other's spouses. He didn't realize that it's the Yevamah, she didn't realize it's the Yavam. Or they were both mezid, they both had kavanah of znut, or they were both ones. So we have to figure out, we still didn't explain what the case of ones is by bia. So, afilu shneim shogim, shneim mezidim, shneim anusim. So, ones de matnitin hechi dami. So, what's the case of the ones of our Mishnah? So, just to recap, we said that a person, yibum is koneh, yibum works, if a yavam has bia with the yavama, even if it's shogeg, he didn't realize he's together with the yavama. Even if it's mezid, he's just doing it for the purpose of zunut. Even if it's ones. So what's the case of ones? So we're a few lines from the bottom of non gimel amud bet. So ones de matnitin hechidami. What's the case of being together with a yavama beones? So ilema keshansu of the kochavim. If you want to tell me the case is that ovdei kochavim forced them to have bia. Literally said, if you don't have bia, your life is going to be over. Uba and then, is really, the truth is a machloket Tosfot and other Rishonim how to learn this Gemara. Very, very interesting sugya. But for our purposes, we'll keep it simple. They came to him and they said, listen, if you don't have bia with this woman, your life is over. Okay, and he has bia with the yavama. Let's say the case is the guy didn't want to do yibum. And they Ovdei Kochavim came over to him and they said, listen, you're going to do the yibum for this lady or else. So then he does it. So if that's the case of ones, so v'ha'amar Rava in ones le'erva lefi she'ein kishui ela ladat. So we have a teaching from Rava. Rava says, when it comes to someone being together with an erva, say two people are together, right? There's no claim that the guy could say, oh, I was ones, I didn't do it on purpose, it was ones, I was forced to do it, because ein kishui ela ladat, because an erection, which is required to have bia, is only ladat. It can't be beones. They can't force the guy to have the erection. Even if they pick up the guy and put him on the woman, there's no bia. Bia is not going to happen.
Forcing the man or forcing the woman?
Forcing either one. If either one is forced, it's still considered a yibum. Now the question is, what's the case of force of bia? How can you force someone to have bia? The rule is ein ones le'erva lefi she'ein kishui ela ladat. So even if they pick up the guy, they pick up the girl, and they put them together, but he needs his dat to have the erection. So you can't say that he was forced. They never forced him to have an erection. That's something that he did with his own dat. So that's not a case of ones. So when you say ones works for yibum, what's the case? How do you have ones by bia? How can you force the guy to have bia? It's always gonna be his dat. Ein kishu ela ladat. So the Gemara says you're right. It can't be that, they told him that they forced him by putting fear in him or by taking him and putting him on the woman because that you need his dot. So Ella, rather the Gemara says beyashin. The Gemara says, okay, maybe the case is that he was sleeping and in his sleep he somehow had the bia. That's a ones. So the Gemara says no. That doesn't work for Yibum. He's not kona the Yevama in that way because when he's sleeping, he has 0 dot at all. Right? V'ha'amar Rav Yehuda, top of the next amud, Yashen lo kana bivimto. If somebody is sleeping, he's not kone. If he's sleeping and he has bia in his sleep, he's not kone with his Yevama. Rashi explains because the guy doesn't have any dot. In order to be kone, the Yevama, the person has to have dot. Now, what he's doing could be be'ones or whatever, but he has to have some level of basic dot. So Ella, so we're still in search. What's the case of ones where he's kone the Yevama? So Ella, says the Gemara, benitka. The case is like this. Rashi says that the guy was laying on the on the top, on the roof, or whatever, and he had a kishui, he had an erection, and then he fell right on top of the woman. Okay. That's how far we have to go to find the case of ones. That's an ones. So the Gemara says, no, even so, not happy about it. We were waiting for that.
You have to go to the right direction too. I'm failing on.
Okay, maybe it's a 1 in a billion chance, but the point is,
when there's a will, there's a way.
the point is, the Gemara has to search and figure out how is it. What's the case of ones? So the Gemara is suggesting, okay, this is this case. So the Gemara says, V'amar Rabba teaches that nafal minagag v'nitka, someone who fell off of a roof and he fell onto a lady, and this happened. Chayav ba'arba dvarim, he has to pay 4 different types of categories of financial loss that she could incur, which we're going to see later on. Uviyevimto lo kana, but he's not koneh her.
He doesn't get kosher either.
Let's say he already had a kishui. Yeah, whatever, he was resting on the top, he already had a kishui. Rashi says he was planning to be together with his wife and he fell. He had a kishui for his wife and he fell. Right? Rashi says so, but what do you see from here? You see that by what's it called? This is not even, he's not koneh a yevama in that way. So when the Mishnah says he's koneh be'ones, it cannot be talking about this case. Because in this case, he's not koneh his yevama. Rabbah teaches he has to pay different types of damages that he could have caused her, but he's not koneh her as the yevama. So Ella, rather, so we're still stuck. What is the case of ones? That he's koneh the yevama if he has bia be'ones. So Ella, kegon shenitkaven leishto. So the case is like this. He had kavana for ishto. He had kavana to be together with his wife. And therefore he had a kishui. He was planning to be together with his wife. Vetakvato yevimto uba aleha. And his yevama, she took place of the wife and she forced him. So when he had a kishui, he didn't have a kishui in mind for the yevama.
He didn't mention about the family forcing with the gun to do.
Oh, we're gonna get to this. So the case that we want to say of ones, where the guy is ones, is he didn't do anything. He was planning to be together with his wife, and his yevama took him and forced him. So that he was ones, because the before when we said ein kishui ela ladat, that was he didn't have a kishui and they forced him to be with the. Okay, so the act of having a kishui, that's already him doing it bedat. That's not being forced. But over here he had a kishui already and she took him. So that's the case of where he's honest. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. That's the case where the guy is honest. Now shnehem anusim debe Rabbi Chia hechi dami. We said Rabbi Chia said also a case where they're both honest. It still works. The man is honest, the yavam is honest, and the yavama is also anusa. So what's that case where they're both honest and the yibum is a good kinyan, the yibum is a good yibum? So what's that case? Kagon shenitkaven liishto. So the case is the guy, first he had kavanah to be together with his wife, and he had a kishui to be together with his wife. V'takfu ovdei kochavim udvakum ze beze. And people took them and they put them together. Meaning, she's honest and he's honest in that case. And the kishui was not his dot to do anything with the kishui. He was planning to be together with his wife, and then they were honest and they took him and they put him together with his yevama. So even in such a case, it works for the yibum. So you see, for yibum, you don't need necessarily dot to do yibum. As long as a person has dot for bia, that's good enough to complete the yibum. Right? Uba'aleh. So and then he was with her in that way. That's the case of honest. So we said in our Mishnah that if the yavam is together with the yavama, ben be'ones, ben beratzon, ben beshogeg, ben bemezid, and honest is even in this case where he had a kishui for his wife and they took him and her and they put them together, the yavam and the yavama, they put them together. That is honest. Okay, so says the Gemara, mina nimili. How do we know this? How do we know that that bia accomplishes yibum even though it's honest, even though it's shogeg, etc.? How do we know that? The Tanu Rabbanan, Yevama yavo aleha, mitzvah. The Torah says Yevama yavo aleha. The Yevama is together with, Yevama yavo aleha. Her yavam comes on her. So what do we learn from there? Mitzvah. That there's a mitzvah to do yibum more than chalitza. Davar acher, we have another teaching from the same pasuk, Yevama yavo aleha, ben beshogeg, ben bemezid, ben beones, ben beratzon. That as long as he's together with her, whether it's shogeg, mezid, ones, ratzon, it says yavo aleha. As long as he comes on her and he has bia with her, that makes the kinyan. Basically, the way yibum works is the brother who's alive is taking the position, he's filling the shoes, he's putting on the shoes of the brother who was niftar. He takes over his nachala, his inheritance, takes over his wife, takes over his family, and the child that he's going to have is Yakum al Shem Achivamet. So he doesn't need to do a new kiddushin and a new, midirabanan, there's ma'amar, but midoraita, there's no concept of kiddushin by the yevama, because he's stepping into a kiddushin that already happened, and the way to do it is just by any type of bia. That's the way it's working. But either way, the Gemara asks, "V'ha'afikte lemitzvah." We use this pasuk of Yevamah yavo aleha to tell me that there's a mitzvah to do yibum more than chalitza. So how can we use the same pasuk to teach me that, Yevamah yavo aleha, whether it's shogeg, whether it's mezid, whether it's on, how can we do that? So the Gemara says, no, lemitzvah mi ve'im lo yachpotza ish nafka. We actually learn the fact that there's more of a mitzvah to do yibum than chalitza from a different pasuk. The pasuk says, "Im lo yachpotza ish lakachat et yivimto." If the person does not want to do yibum, then he does chalitza. So we learn from there that the greater mitzvah is yibum. The secondary mitzvah is chalitza. Right? Hachafetz yavem. But if he wants to, he does yibum. That's the greater mitzvah. V'chiyat akra ben beshogeg, ben bemezid, ben beones, ben beratzon. And when we have this pasuk of Yevamah yavo aleha, that's teaching me ben beshogeg, ben bemezid, ben beones, ben beratzon. Okay. Tanya yidach. We have another braita. Yevamah yavo aleha kedarka. It says Yevamah yavo aleha. The yavam is with the Yevamah. From there we learn that if they have bia kedarka, the normal way of having bia, then he's koneh. And the pasuk continues. It says ulkacha. So we learn from that word that shelo kedarka. Even if there's bia in an abnormal way, shelo kedarka, right from the backside, that's also koneh. That also works.
How we could learn from it? When he says we have to with the dark
So we have two words to tell us bia. One is Yevama yavo aleha, and one is ulkacha. So why do I need two words? One is teaching me in a regular way. The second word is teaching me even in an irregular way. The fact that there's two words, Yevama yavo aleha, ulkacha, teaches me even shelo kedarka. Yeah. And then it says right, there's three parts that we're going to make a drasha. Yevama yavo aleha, ulkacha lo ulkacha, and v'yibema. So it could have just said v'yibem, bia gomeret ba, ve'en kesef v'shtar gomrin ba. From the fact that it uses the word v'yibem, we learn that you need to do bia, and kesef and shtar don't work, even though those work for kiddushin by a single girl. But for yibum, kesef and shtar don't work. You need actual bia to do the yibum. V'yibema bal korcha. We learn from there even bal korcha, even against her will, the yibum will work. So that's one braita from that pasuk. Now davar acher, we have another teaching from that pasuk. Yevama yavo alea ben beshogeg, ben memezid, ben beones, ben meratzon. So we learn from that same pasuk that bia works, yibum works, whether it's shogeg, mezid, ones, ratzon. So the Gemara says, "V'ha'afikte lekedarka." We learn that pasuk. We learn Yevama yavo aleha. That means bia kedarka. That teaches me bia kedarka. So the Gemara says no. Hahu milahakim la'achiv shem. You're right. Really, we learn the bia kedarka from a different pasuk. It says lahakim la'achiv shem. The whole purpose of the yibum is to have a child and to provide name for the deceased. So I mean, be a continuation of the lineage of the deceased brother. So it makes sense that the bia should be in the area where a child comes from. The hakim la'achiv shem, right? Nafka v'makom shemekim shem. That's where the bia is, in the place where the child comes from. And that pasuk that we had before, Yevama yavo aleha, teaches me b'meones, b'memezid, b'meshogeg, b'meratzon. Either way, the Gemara's question was
from the front, not from the back usually.
There's bia kedarka and there's bia shelo kedarka. Bia shelo kedarka means not the normal.
Not the normal way.
Yeah. So either way, what do you see from what do we just learn? The Gemara asked, how do we know that yibum is koneh even ben beshogeg, ben bemezid, ben beones, ben beratzon, even without kavana for yibum? We have a pasuk. That's the basic answer. We have a pasuk, Yevama yavo aleha, ben beshogeg, ben bemezid, ben beones. Okay, gufa. Amar Rav Yehuda. So we brought a case earlier. Rav Yehuda taught that if somebody's sleeping and he has bia, that's not koneh to the Yevama. Damar kra, Yevama yavo aleha, ad mechaven la l'shem bia. The Yevama yavo aleha, ad mechaven la l'shem bia. Until he has kavana for her for the purpose of bia. So there has to be a kavana for bia, meaning not necessarily for that person. If he has kavana for bia with his wife, but he's with the Yevama, that's good, right? That counts as yibum. He has to have kavana for a bia. That's the not
to do the mitzvah of the Yevamot.
Even if he doesn't have kavana for that, he's still koneh. But as long as he has kavana for bia, so that's what Rav Yehuda teaches. So the Gemara questions Vatanya ben Er ben Yashen. We have a braita that teaches whether he's sleeping, whether he's awake, he's still koneh. So even if he's sleeping, he's koneh. So the Gemara says no. Ema ben Era ben Yashena. Maybe that's talking about she's sleeping. She is sleeping, but he is not. So in that case, he's koneh. But if he's sleeping, he's not koneh. So the Gemara says Vatanya ben Erhu ben Yashenhu. We have a braita that says clearly, even if he is sleeping, he's koneh. Ben erahi, ben yeshenahi. So the Gemara says, "Achavayaskinan ben mitnamnem." That's talking about mitnamnem, that he's like, half in, out, dozing off. Hechi dami mitnamnem. What's the case of mitnamnem? Meaning that's when he's koneh. He's not fully sleeping. If he's fully sleeping, he's not koneh. He's like half sleeping. So hechi dami mitnamnem. What's the case of mitnamnem? Amar Rav Ashi. Nim v'nolim, tir v'lo tir. He's like half asleep, half not. He's awake, but he's not awake. He's sleeping, but he's not asleep. Kigon dekaru lavani. You ask, you call him and he answers. V'lo yad ala adorei svara. But he doesn't know how to, respond with any svara. V'chimad kiru lemidkar. And you remind him something he remembers. It's a nemat pasha. Okay, gufa. Amar Rabba. Nafal minagag. So another case that we brought earlier. Amar Rabba. Nafal minagag v'nitka chayav ba'arba'a dvarim. somebody who fell from the roof and he fell on the woman, so he's chayav with four payments. Uvivimto lo kanab. He's not koneh the yevama in that way. What are the 4 payments? Nezek, if he caused any damage to her.
Okay.
Right, say he fell on her and she broke her arm. So there's a nezek, there's a damage in value that he caused. Tsa'ar, pain that he caused, he has to pay for. Shevet, the amount of time that she has to take off of work for that, he has to pay. And ripui, her medical bills, he has to pay.
It's all the same.
It's not. They're all different categories.
All medical situations.
They're all different categories of. You could have one without the other. Meaning, it could be something that there is no medical. It could be something that there's no pain. It could be something that she doesn't have to take off of work. They're each separate categories. Now, aval boshet, but the embarrassment, lo mechayev. He doesn't have to. That he's not chayav to pay. Damar mar ein chayav ala boshet ad yitkaven. Because when it comes to embarrassment, he's not chayav to pay for the embarrassment until he has kavana. Amar Rava, nitkaven la'atiach bakot le'itiach bevimto lo kana. Rava says as follows. Let's say the person, he had kavana to be motzi zera on the wall. Meaning he didn't have kavana for any bia. He had kavana to be motzi zera, but not for any bia. So, nitkaven la'atiach bakotel. He had kavana to be mazriya on the wall. Ve'itiach bevimto. And he didn't realize his yevama was behind the wall, and however it worked out, he was with the yevama. Okay? So he had kavana to be motzi zera on the wall, and he was motzi zera in his yevama. So lo kana, he's not koneh. But la'atiach bebehema, if he had kavana to be together with a behema, ve'itiach bevimto, and he ended up being together with his yevama, kana, in that case he's koneh. What's the difference? Because he had kavana for a bia. Once he had kavana for a bia, then he's koneh the yevama with that type of bia. So what do you see from this Gemara? We have a few klalim that we saw throughout all the different cases. Right? He has to be in a situation where he has dat, right? According to Rashi. If he's sleeping, it doesn't work. Right? If he falls off the roof and falls onto it, it doesn't work. Right? There has to be a dot for a bia. That there has to be. And and kavana for a bia. But if he doesn't even have any of that, then the yibum does not work. So I guess maybe we'll stop here. We'll leave the bulk of that for the next amud. Next amud is going to be a long amud, but we'll B'ezrat Hashem get through it.
If you're sure, you might fill up.